We're on a mission from God.
Wendy?
So I got that going for me.
Darling?
Looks like I picked the wrong week to quit sniffing glue.
Light of my life.
We enjoy your films.
I am a human being.
I thought they smelled bad on the outside.
Welcome to Vintage Video, where we'll be reviewing every major film release of the 1980s in real time. I'm Patrick O'Reilly.
I'm Jesse Bayless.
And I'm Richard Wells.
And today marks the 40th anniversary of the release of Cruising on February 15th, 1980. It was adapted from a book by Gerald Walker, written and directed by William Friedkin, and released by United Artists. On the same day in America as Caligula. Seems like you're crossing over with your audience.
We're just getting the C's done here.
Interesting choice.
I want to say a couple of things right off the bat.
Yes.
We watched.
Hold on. Let me preface that even with, this is the second consecutive episode where you might want to be careful about who's listening to the podcast. Again, we won't be using any terminology that you can't see on television, but this is a very adult-oriented film.
We are watching the altered version of this film.
Okay.
I noticed something was off right away because it was the updated Warner Brothers logo.
Right, and it's probably the cleanest picture quality we've had of anything we've watched so far.
But it didn't have the opening statement about this doesn't depict. This isn't meant to depict the whole of the homosexual community. It's just supposed to show a portion of it. There was a disclaimer that was supposed to be at the beginning, and that was removed for this version.
Okay.
But this is also part of a trend that I've noticed when I'm watching some Blu-rays, that they don't show the original production logo that accompanied the film before. They show the more recent one.
The newest logo, yeah.
And I think that that's weird because some of the logos are cool and vintage.
It's also why a lot of people honestly were more excited about having A New Hope with the Fox fanfare in front of it than they were about like Disney getting Marvel or any of that other stuff, like getting the Fantastic Four and X-Men back. They were just like, oh, now we can watch episode 4 with the Fox fanfare at the front of it. And it's like, yeah, there's something to be said for the time accurate opening logos for these movies. And it's funny because a lot of the time you'll have like a house with a clock in its walls that Eli Roth just did. Like he got the oldest possible Amblin logo to put in front of it because he liked the retro feel of it. So it's just funny going the other direction too.
Because this movie opens up with the Warner Brothers logo with audio from the movie over the logo. Right. And I wasn't able to find out if that's how the original was like.
Yeah, I don't know. I didn't even realize this was an altered version of it.
Was it altered in any other way?
Apparently there's
more footage.
A little bit more footage because he had to go back and the Friedkin had to go to the MPA time after time after time after time trying to get this movie reduced. Now, it's not the full cut. That 40 minutes were cut from
a lot of it was lost.
But this does have some additional scenes, but not. I think it's a matter of minutes.
Right.
But I wondered because having the film audio over the production logo
seems like a choice,
but it feels like a very modern choice.
Yeah.
I can't think of too many movies before a certain time that would do that. The first thing I can think of, like The Burbs, where it played the score of the Universal logo, only because the Universal logo was part of the opening sequence.
Right.
I was gonna say because the Indiana Jones movies all did that, but then again, they made the logo part of their opening sequences.
Correct.
So
most literally in the last installment, where the mountains literally turned into a molehill.
Yeah. But the next thing I wanted to say, I went into this movie completely blind.
I had no idea what it was about either.
No idea. So Cruising, we opened up with a boat. I was like, oh, okay, so this is about boats.
This is like
cruising on boats.
Captain Ron.
Different kind of cruising.
Prequel.
And then it just immediately cuts to a dismembered arm floating in the water. I was like, oh my.
Yeah.
What is this movie about?
And I knew it was based on a true story, so I was like, that's basically all I knew, is that it was a reporter had written a story that was adapted into a novel that was adapted into this film. And this was not what I expected this movie to be about.
Yeah.
Apparently De Niro and Roy Scheider both turned down the role of Steve, the main character.
And I was watching this film thinking about Roy Scheider because of Sorcerer. Because Sorcerer was really great, and Schreiber was great, and Friedkin, did a great job with that film.
Yeah.
And so I'm thinking, man, one of these characters must have been meant for Roy Scheider. One of them must have been.
And it was the main character, the Al Pacino role.
The director's first choice was actually Richard Gere.
Yeah, which is crazy because it would have come out less than a month after American Gigolo.
I wonder if he apparently he was really interested.
He was attached.
In doing it. He was attached.
He was attached when Al Pacino got the script for the movie and was like, "I'm really interested in doing this movie," and they were like, "Well, Richard Gere is not huge, and you're coming off of Godfather 1 and 2, so come on in and play this character."
I wonder if Richard Gere would have been more typecast then because of the two extremely homosexual roles in the same year.
That it would in the same month practically.
Well, I wouldn't imagine he probably would not have done the other then.
He wouldn't have
turned down the other one.
Yeah.
Well, because John
Travolta would have picked it back up and done American Gigolo.
I think this would have been filming earlier than American Gigolo because
and our last movie, Caligula, both started in 76.
Yeah, okay. Yeah. So they came out way after they were shot. So I imagine that American Gigolo actually shot after he lost this role.
Okay, that makes sense then.
So maybe after losing this role, he was like, it's kind of like that. Yeah. American Gigolo.
Something that I don't know if I should save this bit of trivia for after we discuss the plot of the movie, but there's some insane trivia.
Okay, I'm looking forward to that.
You know what? I'm just going to say it right now because it's not too much of a spoiler. So in the movie The Exorcist, also directed by William Friedkin, there's a scene at a radiologist's lab where they're doing scans of this girl's brain who's supposed to be possessed by a demon, and the person playing the radiologist's assistant is an actor named Paul Bateson. So when William Friedkin was gearing up to make this film, he learned that Bateson was awaiting trial for the post-coital murder of a gay film critic, Addison Verrill. So he decided, you're not in jail, I can speak with you. I want to talk to you about this because it's similar to what's happening in my movie, and I just want to get a feel for your psyche and what went into what happened and everything. So he meets with him, and he gets some thoughts for the movie, and he leaves and he makes the movie. Bateson was later sentenced to life in prison, but not before dropping several hints while in custody that he was the actual body bag killer that the novel and film Cruising were based on.
Huh. So the director was convinced to do this film because he actually ended up meeting the killer.
That was unrelated. That happened after the movie that he was sent to prison. So he thought he was just talking to another murderer to get an idea of the mentality, but he was actually talking to the murderer who was never caught for the crimes that his movie was about.
That's crazy. Who was also in another movie he did.
Who was also in The Exorcist as an actor.
That's so weird.
Yeah.
Wow.
But that's just an insane coincidence that he cast a murderer and then later on wanted to make that murderer's story and didn't know that it was someone who he'd already worked with. Al Pacino playing the main character in this movie, Steve Burns, who in real life was 20 years old, like a rookie cop.
Mm-hmm.
How old would you guess Al Pacino was when he made this movie?
39.
Wow, that's startlingly close. He was exactly 39. You already know.
Okay,
that's crazy.
I looked that up.
He doesn't look 39 to me, but wow, he was 39 already in 1980. So he's 80 now.
Almost, yeah.
Yeah, but obviously he was a little bit better looking in the Godfather movies than in this one. That was
slightly
4 or 5 years earlier. Serpico, yes. Spielberg was briefly attached.
I imagine that was very
briefly. Every studio said no, but I mean, this was released by United Artists, and now it has a Warner Brothers logo at the front of it. Mm-hmm. So eventually, some studios came on board, but he left to do a movie called Jaws, which nobody remembers. It didn't work out for him. Brian De Palma was desperate to adapt this movie to a film.
I could have seen that.
Yeah, it's totally.
But because this all fell in William Friedkin's lap, he was forced to make Dress to Kill, which is probably one of his better remembered movies.
I really like that.
And he had his chance to work with Al Pacino later when he did Scarface. Friedkin says that he attended several gay bars dressed in only a jockstrap to immerse himself in the culture, preparing for the film.
Well, apparently the actors did too.
Yeah.
He wasn't the only one, and he encouraged everyone to do that. And so a bunch of them all, on their own, they did their research.
But after the film was released, Friedkin was banned from several gay bars. Which, at that point, unless he's going to make another movie about gay culture, why would he be going back to your gay bar?
There was a lot of general protests from the gay community related to this movie.
Is that standing? Is he still banished?
I don't know. You'd have to ask the ramrod or the man pit or whatever. I don't know what they were called.
Well,
the cockpit. That was what.
Yeah. The cockpit. Yeah, the ramrod, or it was either ramrod or armrod. But either way.
No, it was definitely ramrod.
Ramrod. I wrote it down.
There were lots of protests, obviously, when the movie came out because of the way it portrays gay culture, but also a crazy guy shot 8 people at the Ramrod Club after this movie came out.
Oh yeah, he blamed it on this movie.
Yeah. When he was submitting the film to the MPAA, Friedkin included 40 extra minutes, like we said, which have been lost to time. But James Franco later made a movie called Interior Leather Bar, which was a docu-fiction that reimagined some of the missing footage and also dealt with a lot of the creative and ethical problems that come from the film's subject matter.
Well, and supposedly all of that 40 minutes was really just more graphic scenes like in the bars.
Right.
But, in theory, it made it both more and less ambiguous because it kind of helps, show Al Pacino's transition during this film.
Right.
Whatever that may be, it's a little unclear at the end.
Yeah, they leave a lot to the viewer. But yeah, it's a pretty standard director trick to put a lot more extreme footage into the movie that you never intended to use so that you have something to take out when the MPAA says, this is rated X. And then you go, what about if I took a third of the movie out? And then they're like, okay, that's R then.
Or you could do the strategy on a film that I worked on once was make your PA cut together scenes from films that you think are...
show stuff that's violent in other
movies.
movies?
Show stuff that's more violent than what's in your movie, and then submit that to the MPAA and say, how does this get a PG-13, but you gave me an R?
Was that Max Payne?
That was Max Payne.
They should have gone for an R anyway. That should have been a good
We
thing.
just had to recolor time the blood, and then people were pretty good with it. It was silly.
I feel like you're actually hurting your box office with that kind of a title if you're not going for R. But then what do I know? Hitman probably made nothing. I think that had an R.
I don't know how much it made. But Max Payne could have been good. Real good. I really wanted it to be good.
And instead, it wasn't great.
Oh.
I never actually saw it.
You didn't watch it?
No.
Because I love
That's your first credit though, right?
Yeah, that was my first screen credit.
Yeah.
It's not my first film that I worked on, but it was the first screen credit.
So we start the movie with, like you said, a boat in the Hudson River, and they find a hand. Mm-hmm. Then do we go to the morgue?
Yeah, we go to the morgue. Paul Sorvino is there trying to... Oh, no, it's not Paul Sorvino yet. It's one of the other detectives who says, we can't do anything with just a hand. He's like, we can give you a fingerprint.
He's like, I can get you a fingerprint. I got the hand. And he's like, yeah, the fingerprint doesn't do me any good because it's just going to open a homicide investigation. Then I have to find the whole body. So forget it. Just put it in your miscellaneous drawer.
So, fun fact, it's a real morgue.
Were those real body parts on that shelf?
I don't know that I don't think it was real body parts, but apparently that was a real morgue in New York, and everyone was 100% sure that was never going to happen, and they finally convinced the head of the New York City morgue to let them film in the morgue.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Why wouldn't you let someone film in a morgue?
You're going to make them build a whole morgue? I feel like so many movies shoot in real morgues.
That's probably true now, but
maybe this is early in that
70s.
You don't have to open up any of the drawers. You go when there's not so many dead bodies.
But they did open the drawer, and they pulled a big slab out that was just
miscellaneous
different body parts. And he closed it. I forget what the label said. I just remembered that the acronym spelled cuppy.
Yeah, and I was like, oh, this is going to come into play because this insert shot is really lingering.
But no, it's just like, nope, that's just where
miscellaneous body parts
arms
go.
and legs go. But yeah, so we move from there to I think first we have the shot with the two transvestite hookers that are walking down the street, and the police are abusing them.
Yeah, I always forget, is it Martin Starr or Mike Starr?
It's Mike Starr.
Mike Starr. I always confuse those two names.
Martin Starr is like the guy from
Spider-Man.
Yeah.
That's what you go to first, Spider-Man?
Spider-Man.
I was going to go Freaks and Geeks.
Never heard of that, but he's in Spider-Man also. I've heard of Freaks and Geeks. But Mike Starr, I always think of as the gas man from Dumb and Dumber.
How the hell do they know that I got gas?
How the hell did they know that I got gas?
So they're harassing these two, and apparently coerce them into sexual acts.
Yeah.
Under
so
the
they just
threat
basically,
of arrest.
they just pull over on the side of the road and force these two into sex acts.
It's like, I hate gay people. Now I'm going to make you
come gay on me, please.
So this was actually based on something real that was happening at the time as well.
I'm sure.
So
it's
there
probably
was
right
these
now.
two guys that were essentially, I don't know about the sexual acts, but they were shaking down people in the gay community, I guess hookers and others, making them taking them to ATMs and basically holding them up and making them clear out their bank accounts, and even making them at certain times call their parents and make their parents get the money, and but they got caught and they went to trial, and it turns out they weren't actually cops. So
okay,
yeah,
which is
a good thing that they weren't actually cops.
But that's funny because that's a line that's brought up later. Is are you sure they were cops?
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
So we move from that happening to footage inside of a lot of these gay clubs. It's a mix of the Eagle's Nest, the Ramrod, and the Cockpit, where this guy looking very Freddie Mercury with his biker hat and his aviator sunglasses is just eyeing people from across the room and lures someone up to a hotel room, and then after they have sex, he ties the guy up on his back and stabs him 4 or 5 times in the back. And then we cut immediately to the morgue again. Mm-hmm. And this time we have Paul Sorvino is there. And the
coroner?
The coroner is talking him through the first one you can see it's a very straight line, so the victim wasn't expecting it. Mm-hmm. And then everything below is defensive wounds because they're not straight cuts anymore and it's top to bottom, so...
He's right-handed.
Yeah.
There's a lot of forensic stuff.
Yeah.
They this isn't the only time we're getting a forensics kind of speech.
I feel like he was definitely going for accuracy.
Mm-hmm.
They had a consultant.
I'm sure
they had a new NYPD consultant for this film, and a lot of this stuff came from reality. That's
interesting.
Now I'm concerned that I missed something, and I texted Pat. I was like, I need to watch this again because I feel like I missed some things. And it turns out I didn't. But I'm worried I didn't. Is his limp ever explained?
No.
And I was like, is this his choice? Is the limp his choice?
Paul Sorvino has always had a limp.
I'm looking at you very carefully. I knew it. I knew it. I just had to wait 2 more seconds.
It's not real. It's not a true fact.
So I was like, because it's never brought up, and it's consistent.
It's happening from the beginning.
Definitely has a limp. And I was like, I wonder if this is just Paul Sorvino's choice.
Mira Sorvino has the same thing, but on the other side, she inherited it. So he's Paul Sorvino ends up going back to the police station, and that's where one of the transvestite prostitutes that was accosted goes to him and says, "Hey, I got some information on that guy for you, the one you're looking for.
Right.
He was at this club and this club." And I also wanted to let you know that there are a couple cops out there that are harassing us, and you're going to do something about it. They're out of precinct 9 or 6 or whatever.
Also, I hear the word precinct more than I've ever heard in my life.
What's one of the names of the bars?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But and that's when Sorvino says, "Oh, well, are you sure they were cops?" And it's like, "Well, they were in a police car." And it's like, are you sure they were cops? And it turns out by the end of the movie we learned they were cops.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But
which I think is an interesting choice, considering in reality they turned out not to be cops, which I think is obviously, better for the cops. But
come on, blue lives matter.
In this, in this movie, they chose to make them cops, which I think is an interesting choice to turn it around like that.
That is interesting.
I love that the weird little character choice also of Paul Sorvino trying to teach himself how to play chess. And so he's got like the gridded chess board out, and he makes a move and he types it into the computer, and the computer just says illegal move, and he's like, damn it.
He like doesn't even know how to play it right. He's not even bad at it. He just literally can't even remember how you're allowed to move the pieces.
Son of a bitch.
But yeah, then Al Pacino enters. 15 minutes into the movie, our main character shows up.
Well, I didn't realize that at first.
Yeah, that's true. You were losing track because everyone looks the same.
All the guys in the bar look the same. The guy he took home looked the same. They're all these like dark-haired, white men that just all look identical.
Well, interesting factoid for you. You weren't just being gaysist. It turns out that the killer in the first scene plays the second victim.
I was going to tell you that.
They're the same actor.
I know.
Because you were like, now, hold on a second. Can you back that up? Because that's the guy who killed in the first scene, and now he's being killed. Is there a second killer? And I was like, no, these guys just all look the same. No, for no reason, they used the same actor to play the second victim that played the first killer.
That's called a red herring, Patrick.
No, the guy's already dead.
Red herring.
What makes it a red herring? I think you're using this term improperly.
Because it's just so ridiculous.
It doesn't make any sense at all to do that.
Well, he can't be the real killer because he died.
No.
The implication
the killer from the first scene is killed in
the second scene.
The second
in the park
scene.
Yeah.
But then continues to kill throughout the movie.
So are you saying that he like somehow pantomimed stabbing himself to death for the benefit of just the camera in that one scene?
The perfect crime.
But then also in the peep show.
Anytime he showed up after that, we would be like, oh, that's the dead guy. It doesn't make any sense.
The police can't find a dead guy.
Oh, that's true. Double jeopardy.
But additionally, the peep show murder,
yeah,
the guy that gets killed in the peep show murder was the victim from the first scene.
What?
Yeah.
Why do you keep doing this to us?
What's happening in this movie?
But anyway, Steve Burns, Al Pacino shows up, and Paul Sorvino says, hey, are you gay? You like dudes? And he's like, what? No, I'm sorry. You were misinformed. I have to get back to work.
Do you like butt stuff? What? Stop asking me stuff.
He says, you're going undercover. I'm going to send you all these clubs, and you're going to find this guy who's been stabbing gay people because you look like all of his victims.
Right. And he's essentially like promising him,
yeah,
it's like, hey, you'll be detective.
You're going to get your badge much faster this way. And I would, if I were him, I would have been like, I'm 20. I can hang out for 5 years and not get stabbed in the back. So I'm good. But I have a feeling that even Paul Sorvino had an inkling that this guy might have some homosexual tendencies already.
Well, and see, that's why I thought this was going. I thought, everyone knows that Steve Burns is the gay guy in the police force. No one talks about it. Don't ask, don't tell kind of thing. But that's why he's perfect for this mission.
But in actuality, he's like so fresh on the job that no one else knows him at all.
Yeah. And he's married to Karen Allen.
Is he married?
No, they're not married.
Well, they're in a relationship.
Yeah, he lives with her. Yeah. But yeah,
Are we sure they're married? I thought he took off a ring. Maybe they're not.
I don't recall them being married.
I don't remember. I don't remember the ring thing. That might change my answer to that question, but I don't remember. But so he goes to a couple clubs to try and get a feel for it, and it looks like, some scenes out of Caligula a little bit.
Yeah.
In places.
And he meets Powers Boothe.
Powers Boothe. Yeah. He goes into a club and he looks around and he sees these people have like these handkerchiefs hanging out of their pockets, and he's like, okay, this means something. So he goes to this like little hanky shop next door. And
it's not just a hanky shop.
Well, that's why he's open at this hour.
He is credited as a hanky salesman.
Yeah. And he's like, this color means this color means this.
The light blue hank in your left back pocket means you want a blowjob. Right pocket means you give one. The green one left side says you're a hustler, right side you're a buyer. Yellow one, left side, means you give golden shower. Right side, you receive. The red one means...
Thank you.
See anything you want?
I'm gonna go home and think about it.
I'm sure you'll make the right choice.
It's basically like the whole myth about what scrunchies mean when kids come home with them on their arms now in high school or whatever. But he's like, if you tuck this one in your back pocket, it means you're cool to do this, or you want this, or you want to do this to somebody else. And so he's like, all right, well, give me that one. And he goes back into the club with one hanging out of his pocket, and the guy's like, oh, are you down with this? And he's like, no. And he's like, get that hanky out of your pocket.
Yeah. Well, in that particular scene, though, he's like, no, I'm going to go home and think about it. But later he does show back up with a yellow hanky.
Right. Which means that he has a cold. So to fit into the community, he rents like the super cheap apartment, which was actually previously inhabited by one of the murder victims, right?
And all the magazines, he's like, I thought the magazines were planted there
like a
by
cover?
Well, not just the cover. I thought Paul Sorvino was like saying, "Hey, we got you this place, and
I have these lying around."
Well, no, like here's some material. Here's some fashion.
Do some research.
Like these are magazines that are going to be informative because you have supposedly have no knowledge of this culture, and he immediately meets his neighbor, who's super friendly.
Yeah, and he's like throwing away just like 10 pounds worth of gay porno mags.
Which is hilarious because he was going to throw them away, but the neighbor says, oh, no. Don't throw them away.
Leave them
Our
stacked.
landlady likes to sell them, so just stack them up here nicely. So this, I'm just imagining this little old landlady out there selling a load of used gay porn magazines.
I also feel like if I was a landlady that sold used gay porn mags, I would probably check the apartment for them before I rented it to somebody else.
Well, she's a little old lady, I imagine.
She's
so
not tall enough to see them at the top of the
You
closet.
see them up. They were on the top of the closet.
But yeah, so he makes friends with this guy, Ted Bailey, who his new neighbor, who it turns out is like, he's writing a screenplay about his own experience in the city. And he doesn't care that it's not going to sell to anybody because no one makes those kind of stories that he wants to tell because he believes in himself and he believes in his writing.
Well, and I think that this character is really designed to be sort of the antithesis of the whole rest of the movie, and and it's his attempt to be like, hey, look, we have a gay, we have gay culture that's also not all of these things. That's just a normal dude that
before
does
the movie was
things.
even done shooting, there was already protests going on. As soon as they knew that the book was being adapted, they were already like, that's not a fair representation of our culture. And every time someone makes a movie about gay culture, it turns into American Gigolo, and it's, a crazy murderer. Even if the whole time the point of the movie is supposed to be, oh, he's an innocent guy, and then at the end he murders somebody on his way to proving his innocence. Yeah. But yeah, so he sits down and has some coffee with the neighbor, and they talk about his boyfriend and how his boyfriend is not very supportive. And that he's overbearing. But then we're back in the nightclub scene, and Steve actually gets someone to take him to his apartment after they leave the club. But he sort of... does he give some indication to the police that they should be following him? What is the clue that sends all the cops...
rushing into the apartment?
Yeah.
Well, he has a guy that he's tracking this guy named Skip.
Yeah, Skip Lee.
Skip Lee. He's like a guy who's like quick to anger. Even one of the because Al Pacino checks in with Paul Sorvino now and then, saying, hey, the bartender's starting to know me. They're giving me information. I'm talking to some of the guys I see locally. And the bartender says, yeah, that Skip Lee guy, Skip, is crazy.
Yeah, don't mess with him.
Don't mess around. He's not a good guy.
Yeah.
So he's like, okay, this guy fits a profile.
Yeah.
So let me push him a little. And gets him to take him up to his room. And he's wearing a wire. Pacino's wearing a wire.
But he gets completely undressed.
Correct. So now they have no audio. And the last thing they heard of that he was being tied up.
Right.
Which one of the victims...
was completely hogtied before he was stabbed in the back.
Correct. So they go, well, we're gonna rush in, but so many of the scenes in this movie are these really long, drawn-out scenes.
Yeah.
Where all I need to see is them rush in the front door and then be at the apartment door. I don't need to see them all take turns going to the front door.
Yeah, working up the stairs.
Each set of stairs, them then getting to the door, all kind of gathering around the door. Then one of them has to tell the other one to be quiet. It was like, wouldn't you know to be quiet?
None of this is adding to the story. Just cut directly to them busting in.
And then they get they just lightly knock on the door, and I'm assuming they're about Al Pacino and Skip are about to have sex. And he goes, "I'll go get the door." I'd be like,
yeah,
screw who was ever at the door. I'm busy. I'd just be like,
yeah,
like I would just not answer the door. What could be more important?
Which wouldn't have changed this scene at all.
Yeah,
because if nobody answered the door, they would have busted it open.
Yeah.
And arrested the people the same way. But both of them are playing it straight. Like, I don't know who these people are. Why are you in my place? And, and he's like, why are you interrupting us? You don't know what's going on. Yeah. But Al Pacino is completely naked on the bed, hogtied. And they both seem totally confused by it. Cut to them both being interrogated in the same room.
Yeah.
At a table. And they're both saying, like, we already told you what happened. Why are you questioning us over and over again on the same points?
Because they followed Skip to his job at a fancy restaurant.
Right.
That gives out a very particular steak knife.
Right.
And which
could cut through bone, conceivably.
Yeah, and also is very similar to the murder weapon. The forensics analysis guy is holding up to the blade. He says the serrations match.
He holds it up to an X-ray, right?
Mm-hmm. And so they're really pushing Skip. And then
this guy walks in, this 6'5" guy with no clothes. He's just wearing a jockstrap and a cowboy hat.
You mean my most favorite character of the film?
Yeah.
So, fun fact.
That's a real
cop.
That's real! That's a real cop who literally did that professionally during interrogations.
Based on reality.
Yeah.
But it's just so...
It wasn't just based on reality. That was the guy who literally did that during interrogations.
Guy? Oh, dear.
And the point was that if they were too rough with the people being interrogated, they couldn't file a complaint and say, oh yeah, they were shouting at me, and then the 6'5" naked cowboy slapped me across the face. People would be like, oh, okay, well, whatever. That doesn't make any sense. So that obviously didn't happen.
But I love the reaction. It's like, first Al Pacino goes,
who's that guy?
Who hit me? Why hit me? And then when Skip is like, who is that guy?
He just keeps slapping them around back and forth.
And the way he slaps them, it's so like...
It's a hard slap.
It's a hard slap, but it's also like got this like robotic kind of like... I know you can't see what I'm doing, but it's kind of like...
Yeah, like, just backhands him, but like a robot would.
But the drama in the slap is so intense. It's you know what? It's the intensity that you can only get if you're not an actor and you're trying to act like really dramatically slap them. Yeah. So you hold on the slap after you do it.
And then once both of them have gotten slapped, they decide, okay, we're going to start interviewing these guys separately. And that's when Pacino can finally break character. And they bring him into the room with the guy who slapped him. He's like, man, you slapped me really hard. And the guy just looks at him and doesn't say anything. And so he takes his hat off and throws it out the window.
I love that. He just throws the hat out the window.
But the guy doesn't move or react to it at all.
He doesn't say anything.
Yeah.
But the captain or the police chief comes in just to kind of observe. And they're seeing how hard they're pressing this kid. And he's not giving up anything.
Right.
And they're just like, nah, this is.
And then they check the fingerprints, and they're like, it's not the right guy.
Yeah.
Because one of the people that he killed, he went to like a porno theater and put a coin in to play a porno, and then while the movie was playing, he stabbed a guy to death in the theater. And they found the coin that went into the machine, and it had blood smeared on it with a fingerprint.
Right, because he
doesn't match this guy's.
He wanted the room to seem like it's still occupied, so he can have more time to get away.
Right. And we also haven't really touched on it much, but his wife/girlfriend, Pacino's wife/girlfriend.
It is girlfriend. I'm sorry, I was mistaken with the wife. It is girlfriend.
Yeah, is played by Karen Allen, and she is just kind of oblivious the whole time. Apparently, a lot of her performance ended up on the cutting room floor for this movie, but he's been really distant with her. And
I think he's having intimacy issues because it's. I mean, at this point, I guess we can say that he's having conflicts.
Right.
Well, he says, because she's like, you're not interested in me anymore, and he's like, well, what I'm doing is affecting me. Mm-hmm. So it's not really like clear when he says that. It's just like, oh, are you just like?
But he also says there's a lot of stuff you don't know about me. Like there's information I'm withholding.
But like it's not clear on if that means like he's feeling like he's having homosexual feelings, or if he's instead like just being really disturbed by sexuality, like in general, by the things that he's seeing, and he can't handle this intimacy right now. They
leave it a lot for the viewer to decide for themselves.
A lot for the viewer to decide,
especially at the ending. But my interpretation was that he has either been bisexual or gay the entire time and is realizing more of this about himself, or is finally leaning into this proclivity that he's had.
Well, I think that some of the footage that was taken out probably would have given us more clues into what he was experiencing at these clubs and like how that was affecting him.
Yeah. But he goes to Sorvino and says, hey, I'm not trying to get people killed just for being gay, so I'm done with this whole thing. Mm-hmm. And the chief of police has been breathing down Sorvino's neck like, the mayor is coming to town, or somebody's coming to town.
The Democratic Convention.
Oh, the Democratic Convention is going to be in town. He's like, you need to have this whole murder investigation wrapped up with a nice little bow before the DNC comes to town, because we're not going to deal with this on the national stage. So handle it, because this is a problem. And so he's desperate, and he's like, you got to help me, Steve. You got to stay in this. Like, we're going to solve this problem. We're going to help people. You just have to stick to this.
Yeah. There's a couple of connections now that are coming up.
Yeah, he gives them one new piece of information.
Yeah, because one of the murder victims was a Columbia professor.
Yeah, presumably the first murder victim.
Yeah.
Which Pacino gets this information from Ted Bailey, his neighbor, that they think this guy died in a similar way and that it might be related. And Sorvino here is giving him, oh, well, here's his class list. These are the 12 people that this professor ever taught.
Yeah.
Like, it doesn't make sense that it's like 4 pieces of paper.
And one thing I do like that they did with this movie is that the killer is at these clubs throughout the movie.
Yeah.
He sees him often. Like, he's seeing all these other regulars, and he's seeing the killer. We see, as the audience, see the killer.
Yeah.
So we know that he's there. And I thought that was really cool, a cool thing to do.
Well, except that the killer's not always the killer. You know, the
That's
fact
true.
that they keep switching out these people. I mean, I think
I feel like if you're going to lean into he's got a hat and glasses and facial hair on, that has to be how you're hiding who the killer is. You can't also change the actor multiple times.
I agree with you that I don't think it was done right and it was done clearly, but I think that they were trying to imply that it wasn't just one killer. Like, this was a thing. This was a problem.
This is like a Patrick Bateman scenario where it's like, maybe we're just confused about who is doing it.
Well, or that there's just, that there's multiple people that were committing these types of acts at that time, and they're trying to imply that it's like, yeah, so we got one of them, but like there's other victims to this stuff.
Yeah. But so now he has this list of people's faces, and he's flipping through it, and he recognizes one face. It's the one face that looks like maybe it was photoshopped onto this page of other faces, because it's a different contrast level in the photograph. And he finds the name of the person, and he calls up Columbia University and says, hey, I'm looking for so-and-so. Do you have his contact information? They're like, well, here's his address.
Yeah.
And so he's like, okay, great. I'll just go to his house. So he waits outside his house until he leaves, and then breaks into the apartment.
Also real. I mean, the consultant apparently said, well, this one time I had to break into this guy's apartment, and you know what I did? I climbed up the fire escape and just
then pushed the fan out of the window.
Just got, broke into the window, and like, I'm a cop, so like, if anybody were to find me doing any of these things, I'd just be like, I'm a cop. Like, it's okay. I'm supposed to be doing this.
But it's not okay. But he gets into this apartment and is looking through everything, and he finds this box of letters at the bottom of the closet. Mm-hmm. And they're all letters to his father at a bunch of different addresses.
That were never sent.
Right.
Obviously,
just letters that never got sent to anybody because they're here in this shoebox. But then, this part's weird. He leaves the apartment He puts the fan back in place very carefully, but he leaves the letters strewn about in this box.
Yeah.
And just stands behind like a hedge, staring at the window until the guy comes back.
And then when the guy comes back and looks out the window and sees Al Pacino's like, yeah, I got you.
Yeah.
Like, he's just like smiling and nodding.
It's like, if the implication is that you're luring this guy out to flirt with him, like, why would you do these things on the way to flirting with him? Just go to a club with him later. Like, I don't understand why you purposely left this trail for him to find you and be able to implicate him in like some terrible stuff that he's done.
Also, one of the harassed prostitutes. Yeah, sorry, couldn't think of the word. It's not a word I use every day. But
sure,
usually at night.
my own persona at night. No, mentions that they heard singing like a nursery rhyme,
or like, I'm here.
Yeah, and that's another way Al Pacino gives himself away. And I don't understand what he's...
Yeah, why he's like blatantly
is.
telling him like, I know you're a murderer, let's have sex now.
Because I thought
very strange.
I thought maybe that was the goal. To egg... Not to egg him on, but to like reveal, I know who you are, you know who I am.
So maybe he's trying to avoid having sex with this person or be hogtied, and he's just like, just attack me, please. Because all I want to do is kill you.
Because, yeah, if you attack me, then I know... And then this is all over because I'll get the upper hand, hopefully.
Right. So before the guy actually approaches Al Pacino, he goes out and sits on a bench and talks to his dad. And his dad's like, well, you got to kill him.
Yeah.
And he's like, okay, I guess I'll kill him, Dad.
Well, he's not that. He says, you know what you have to do.
Right.
You know what you have to do.
So, I mean...
But the implication is pretty clear.
Yeah, I guess. But I don't think, like... I don't know. Like, I don't feel like it's super clear. Like, the dad's dead.
Right.
So, like...
I knew the second he sat down, I was like, oh, so this is the ghost of his dad is like... This is the...
I don't know if it's clear that his motivation, is like, he's trying to gain his father's approval? Is it because he himself is gay and his father doesn't approve, so he's, like, killing gay people to try to, like, gain his father's acceptance back? Did he kill his father? Did his father abuse him? Like, I don't think it's clear...
No.
On any of those accounts, like what his real motivation is. Well, since they never caught
the guy, they don't know the real motivation. So, I mean, in the true story, they never caught the guy. The movie changes the ending a little bit, but we don't know the actual killer's motivation, other than he presumably liked killing people.
Or did they catch the guy, as we stated at the beginning of this episode?
They caught the guy, but not he wasn't charged with the murders of these murders of the murders and the murders. Anyway. So, so begins the cat and mouse.
Night bench cigarette lighting.
Yeah, they both sit on benches wrong next to each other. And
even try to approach each other wrong. Like, when Al Pacino needs a light, he didn't hop off the bench. He stands up on the bench to walk the length of the bench and then jumps down.
Yeah. And then he goes and lights his cigarette, and then they chase each other, and he's like, hey, you want to go back to my place? And he's like, can't. What about your place? And he's like, can't do my place either. And he's like, there's a cool tunnel over there. Mm-hmm. Let's go have sex in the tunnel. And he's like, I don't want to do it in a tunnel. And he's like, no, it's cool. Let's go.
Let's go do the tunnel.
So they go to the tunnel, and then quick draw McGraw, everybody whips out knives and stabs each other. Well, Pacino stabs the bad guy.
Yeah.
And then just cut to him in the hospital immediately. Mm-hmm.
And they're telling him, like, we got your fingerprints on the coin. We're going to indict you. And the kid just says, well, that's all you're going to get is an indictment.
Yeah.
And I don't know what that means. Like, I mean, other than that, he's not going to give a confession, but it's like they're going to get more than an indictment because...
Well, we have police witness that you attacked him.
We have evidence.
You have the murder weapon on you, presumably.
Right.
Like,
you're not denying any of these crimes?
Yeah.
So apparently in the scene... when he's talking, he's dubbed over with the voice of his father when he says, I didn't kill anybody.
So it's just the father is
talking there. Which apparently earlier, like, I know we had multiple
There's a lot of
killers.
weird ADR at the beginning.
it's also the voice of his father. So that even though it wasn't even the same killer for that scene, like they had a different actor playing the killer, they still dubbed over the voice with the father's voice.
I didn't catch that.
Well, I didn't catch it either. I read this and I'm like, well, that is a whole different implication to some of these scenes.
So could it be then the scene where the killer gets killed is in his mind? Like it's a surrealistic that I'm killing myself in some sort of way?
I don't know. I mean, it definitely seems like an intentional choice to have the same actor who's playing the killer play a victim.
Yeah, and I feel like, like we're at this point, we're really questioning a lot of reality because the main character that we've been following this whole point, like it seems like they're implying like as he has more gay feelings, he goes crazier and crazier because,
Which makes a lot of sense why this movie was protested as heavily as it was.
Of course. I mean, I don't know that they realized that at the time that it was filming, but...
We also, so we move from this hospital room where the killer has finally been overtaken to back to the apartment building where Steve's been staying, and the same police that were harassing the prostitutes in the beginning of the movie are moving into this apartment to see, we skipped a scene earlier, but before he goes out one night, Al Pacino stops by to talk to Ted, and Ted's not home. Because
he overhears an argument, right?
But Ted's not home, but the boyfriend is there.
And I don't know that Ted isn't home, but the boyfriend answers, right?
No, Ted's definitely not home because Pacino busts into his apartment. And I think he was there because he's working at some kind of brokerage house. I think they.
The boyfriend forced him to get some sort of job to pay the rent because he's like, it's your turn now, buddy.
Enough, But and the boyfriend here is James Remar,
who's Dexter's dad.
Yeah, Dexter's dad. But he's pushing back on him, and he's like, "Oh, sorry, because you stopped by on the wrong night to flirt with my boyfriend." And he's like, "No, that's not why I was here." And he's like, "Oh, sure, it's not." And then he slams the door in his face, and Pacino like rages against the door.
Yeah.
And then he's like, "I'm going to call the police." And then he realizes like, "Oh, that would actually be really bad if you called the police."
Yeah.
Because that would like compromise my undercover situation.
But I'm coming in anyway.
Yeah. But so that now we have the police at the same apartment, and it turns out Ted has been viciously murdered, and they're blaming it on the James Remar character, the boyfriend. They're assuming it's a domestic dispute. But the camera lingering on the body and Paul Sorvino's reaction to, wait, who did you say lived next door? John Forbes, which is the fake name that Steve has been using at this apartment. He's like, wait a minute. Does that mean that Steve is a murderer now?
Does it?
It seems
I don't know.
It seems like the way he's reacting to it isn't like I should ask Steve about this. It's more like oh God, what have I done? Did I create a monster? And then we see Steve back in the apartment with his girlfriend, which is a huge, beautiful apartment.
Yeah.
For New York, and he tells her, "Oh yeah, I'm home now. I live here, and I got my badge, and we're all good. I'm done with the undercover stuff." And he's shaving in the mirror, and she notices that he has the leather jacket,
cap,
the biker hat, and the glasses, which he didn't have previously. I'm assuming he took these glasses from the closet where he found the letters.
Yeah.
And she puts all of it on because she's just like, "Oh, that's weird."
Well,
that he has
it's
all
almost
this stuff.
like, he's taking this stuff and sort of
So
assuming the killer's identity.
Yeah. But he's shaving and looking in the mirror and looking at himself, and then he turns and looks at her wearing all the stuff that he took out of that apartment. And then
he looks directly into the camera, like at us.
Yeah. And then we see just this wide shot of him walking into a gay bar like that night. And that's the end of the movie.
I don't know that it's clear that it's him.
That's true.
Once again, I feel like they're being ambiguous.
Oh my God. Can we mention something else? Earlier in the movie, for no reason, we get this pinhole scope on a guy sitting on a...
Yeah.
Like, it's while we're at Columbia University, and the camera's like following people through a room, and in case like you weren't looking at the right character, suddenly all the screen turns black except for a circle around one guy sitting on a railing, and I don't even understand what the point of that was.
It's like like, hey, look, Al Pacino's watching this guy.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, I know. I noticed. I watched
like,
this
yeah.
scene.
We're all watching it.
But I just like to be in the editing room for that, where they're like, is it clear that this is Al Pacino, or what if people think this is just a random person? It's like, what if we just zoom in on him? And it's like, I can't zoom in. It's just going to look really grainy if we zoom in any further. And it's like, all right, we'll just, put an optical on this and just put a circle around him. It's like, put a circle around him. This is a football game.
Like we're looking through a pair of binoculars?
Yeah. No, it's a
Very weird.
monocular. It's just a telescope.
Yeah.
That's what they call that. But yeah, so the implication might be that he has inherited the murderous ways of the gay community, which is a huge reason why this film was protested and is probably in bad taste in general.
So something that was really prominent throughout the film that I found incredibly distracting was the score. The music was really bizarre the whole time. Like it felt like a horror movie score, and I know that it's
everything that Friedkin does.
It's
right?
a suspenseful thing and stuff like that, but like it just felt so out of place and so prominent in these scenes. And I really feel like it changed some of the meanings of some of these scenes, where like you're getting this weird, uneasy, creepy, suspenseful feeling when that's really not what I think the scene was about.
Yeah.
But
That's possible.
Yeah, apparently the composer who had done some work on The Exorcist, he wasn't the main composer on The Exorcist, but he was into making music without instruments, and so all of this stuff was just like, I'm gonna rub on this table and I'm gonna tap on this glass, and like.
That reminds me of the MTV Movie Awards, where they had the whole bit with the people that worked on the soundstage.
Foley artists?
The Foley artists, yeah. Where they were just like doing terrible Foley art.
The Foley in this movie was pretty over the top too. Like
Yeah.
the crunchy, like squeaky leather in all of these scenes, like, and the jingly chains were pretty over the top.
And the whistles, like when they're in the precinct night, which is
which is the gay club where everyone's dressed as a cop.
Yeah, which is
Gets kicked out because he's not dressed like a cop.
Well, and because it's like a thing, like he's worried that he's like, "Are you a cop?" And like he's like,
no, yeah,
no,
maybe.
Speaking of awards,
if you are, it's entrapment already.
Yeah. Speaking of awards, we should have talked about some of the award nominations.
I don't know the award nominations.
It was nominated for not one, not two, but 3 Razzies.
Oh, really?
Of the first Razzies.
Oh, it's the first Razzies. I didn't know that.
Yeah, the first Razzies.
So we're going to get to cover every Razzie nominee on this podcast.
And I don't think that... so I think this is our first, because I looked at the list of the Razzies from 1980, and we haven't hit any of these other movies yet.
So who got the nominations here?
So it was Worst Director for William Friedkin.
I don't think that's fair. Already even.
Worst Screenplay. And
that might be fair just because of how wrong-headed it is.
And Worst Picture of the Year.
Worst Picture.
Clearly they didn't see Just Tell Me What You Want.
Which wasn't even on the list.
I thought you were about to rip on Caligula again.
It's not even on the list, Just Tell Me What You Want. There are some movies on the list that I want to see, that I'm excited to see, that are on the Razzie list.
Okay, just read through the Best Picture.
Okay, Worst Picture, you mean?
Or, sorry, Worst Picture for 1980.
Worst Picture nominees, or winners. So, Can't Stop the Music won.
Okay, that's the Village People movie?
And so, other nominees were Cruisin', The Formula, Friday the 13th.
What? Really?
The Nude Bomb, which
That's
maybe...
the Get Smart movie?
Yeah, the Get Smart movie. The Jazz Singer, Raise the Titanic, Saturn 3...
which we'll be reviewing very soon.
Windows.
Okay.
And Xanadu.
Now, Windows is
Xanadu.
It's basically just Cruisin' but with women. William Friedkin obviously directed Exorcist, French Connection, and Sorcerer, which is basically a remake of Wages of Fear.
And you've seen that, right? Sorcerer?
Wages of Fear?
Sorcerer.
I haven't seen Sorcerer. I've
okay.
seen Wages of Fear.
Sorcerer's great.
It also isn't there another movie that's like A Ride with Death or something like that? There was an MST3K episode of another movie about transporting a highly explosive material. Anyway, good stuff. Al Pacino obviously at this point had done Serpico, Dog Day Afternoon, Godfather, So it's still early in his career, even though he was 39 at the time. Paul Sorvino is Captain Edelson, who there's a recurring joke that he keeps calling him Captain Edelman, which just makes me think of Randy Edelman, who composed the MacGyver theme. Yeah. And also the Briscoe County Jr. theme.
But Paul Sorvino
and
is
the
in lots
Olympics
of stuff.
theme, which is also the Briscoe County Jr. theme. Yeah, Paul Sorvino's in a bunch of stuff. Goodfellas, Rocketeer. He was Kissinger in Nixon, and he's Mira Sorvino's dad. Hence the limp she inherited.
There's no limp. No limp.
No limp. Karen Allen is just wonderful. She plays Nancy here, the girlfriend. She will be in Raiders. She's also in Starman and Scrooged. Those are the three that I think of.
Animal House?
That's true. That was before this, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. But I always go to Scrooged. Yeah. It's always Claire for me.
I mean, Raiders of the Lost Ark for me, for sure.
That makes sense. And it's always Starman for her. Right, Jess?
For me?
When you think of Karen Allen, you always tell me Starman first.
No. I mean, no.
We got to see one of the stars of that movie.
Did we?
Starman?
Of Starman.
Did we see Starman? I feel like we watched that at the New Beverly.
We probably did. And when I said the stars of the movie, I meant Meteor Crater in Arizona.
Oh.
Where they shot the finale of the film.
I was going to say, because I did meet one of the stars of that movie.
Oh, Jeff?
Yeah.
Jeff, our good friend Jeff.
Yeah.
That we refer to by his first name. You helped him book a hotel room or something, right?
Yeah, I took care of his ADR and all that stuff on Tron.
Because you worked on Tron. Don Scardino, who played Ted Bailey, the neighbor, is a director of a lot of TV stuff. He did 38 episodes of 30 Rock and 2 episodes of Kimmy Schmidt. So that's fun. Joe Spinell, who plays the guy opposite Mike Starr that's harassing the prostitutes. That's Patrolman DiSimone in the movie. He was Frank Zito in Maniac, which is a kind of similar character. He plays
Dr. Zito?
Sure. He plays Gazzo in Rocky 1 and 2, which I think is like somebody that people like make bets through or something like that. I can't remember who the Gazzo character is.
I don't remember.
He's also a personnel officer and taxi driver. Ed O'Neill. This is Ed O'Neill's first feature film.
I could not find him.
Oh, he was.
Oh, you didn't find him? He was one of the cops that was
like
at the restaurant when they noticed the guy at the restaurant.
Okay. I know the scene you're talking about. I was like, maybe I was looking too hard.
He looks very different.
Yeah, when it first came up, I was
young.
like, is that Bundy? And she was like, Bundy who? And I was like, the Septopus. And she's like, Bundy the Septopus? I was like, Al Bundy, he played Hank the Septopus. And then she looked it up, and it was him. James Remar, of course, was Gregory, who we said before was Dexter's father. He's also Ajax in the Warriors movie, which came out just before this. William Russ, the dad from Boy Meets World, played Paul Gaines, who was the roommate of the murderer, or someone else who lived in the dorm.
Yeah,
like the boyfriend or roommate.
They didn't seem like they were in a relationship. They were just kind of
hanging out.
Yeah,
he's like, hey, if you want to go out tonight, let me know.
Yeah. But he also played Slick Goodland in The Right Stuff. Mike Starr, who we mentioned before, was the gas man in Dumb and Dumber. You recognize from the live-action portions of James and the Giant Peach?
Yes, that is where my brain went.
Which I didn't even remember that there were any.
He was like the police officer.
Yeah, he was in The Natural, Robert Redford.
Sure. And then Ed Wood is another big one.
Yeah.
Where he's like the guy who just like, I have all this footage of like stampedes and like nature. It's like, what are you going to do with this? And he's like, I could use it in my movies. I could make a whole movie out of all your stock footage. And Miller's Crossing, obviously, he's great in that. Powers Boothe as the Hankie salesman. He was Curly Bill Brocious in Tombstone.
Yeah.
He plays Gideon Malik, a member of the World Security Council in Avengers, which is, I think, our second Marvel Cinematic Universe character.
I don't think I knew who he was until Deadwood. Like, I don't think I knew any of his work until we saw him in Deadwood.
He was Psy.
Yeah.
But
was Sin City before Deadwood or during, after?
I don't know because I didn't watch Deadwood when it was on. I think it was after.
I think it was during.
But obviously his best role, inarguably,
yes,
best role of all time, is Colonel Jim Faith in MacGruber, because that's just the best thing he's ever done. And I mean that in the nicest possible way. Because that is my favorite movie.
He had a sense of humor about it. He
plays it so perfectly. He's wonderful. Up or down? What do you think? Is this a watch?
You know, I think that it's not.
I would agree. I say that it's not. I think that if they'd paid the same attention to detail to the actual story of the killings that they did to all the procedural investigation, that it would have gone a long way. But just making up the story of like, oh, I bet he just was mad at his dad and his dad's ghost told him to kill people is like a weirdly oversimplified way to wrap the story up.
Yeah, I think that they just didn't make it. I don't want to say they should have made it more obvious, but I think that it was so ambiguous that it felt like they didn't know what they were doing.
Yeah. What do you think, Richard?
It's gonna be a no.
No for you.
Similar reasons. I just wasn't compelled by anything about this movie. Like I said, I texted you. I said I gotta watch it again because something's wrong. I missed something and I don't know what it was. And it turns out no, I didn't miss anything.
They just left it out.
It was just confusing.
Yeah.
And I think they left it out to try and avoid being controversial, but it's to the detriment of the film.
Yeah.
In the long run. Where does this land on your Letterboxd list?
Yeah, so surprisingly, even though I say it's a no-go on the watching it again, I think I put it... this is hard. So I'm putting it somewhere around American Gigolo. I'm just debating whether or not it's above or below it, and I think I put it above it. I think I liked it better than American Gigolo, which means it's below The Fog and above American Gigolo for me.
All right. What about you?
I'm going to be breaking away from my tradition of always going with what Jesse tells me to do.
Beforehand.
I'm going to be putting this a little lower, between below Simon, but above To All a Good Night.
Okay.
I'm doing my list. Jesse had responded earlier about how she's doing her list. I'm doing my list about, like, am I likely to watch these movies again? Which one would I rather watch again if I had to choose? And that's why Caligula is at the bottom of the list.
Exactly. That's how I'm doing mine.
But I much rather watch Simon again over this movie.
Yeah.
And I much rather watch this movie over To All Good Night. So,
I think my list is going in order of, okay, since the top of my list right now is The Fog, I would say that if you haven't seen any of these movies, watch The Fog first.
Mm-hmm.
If you have all of these movies to choose from, this is the order you should be watching them in if you have to watch just these movies. And following that, I put Cruising, like you said, below Simon and above To All a Good Night, but for me there's two movies in between those, and it goes right in the middle, just below American Gigolo, but above Hero at Large for me.
So technically mine, sorry, I missed a film on here. Mine is between Hero at Large and American Gigolo. So
okay.
So I would rather watch this again than American Gigolo, but I would rather watch Hero at Large than this.
Okay, that's fair.
Yeah. Which I think, like, it's interesting because your list is more, like, geared towards, like, your recommendations to somebody else, and my list is absolutely, like...
Your personal list.
How do I feel about this movie, and I base that on if I'd want to watch it again.
Sure. Well, my list is kind of that, too. I mean, I think the order that I would recommend them to other people is pretty close to the order that I would watch them in myself. I think that's about it for this one. If you guys have any thoughts you'd like to share, we are Vintage Video Pod on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and Letterboxd. Or as I've said before, you can find each of our full movie rankings for the year. Please consider rating us on iTunes to help people find the show. And if you find the time to review us, we will thank you personally in an upcoming episode. If you're feeling especially generous, you can also support the show through Patreon at patreon.com/vintagevideopodcast. Thank you so much for listening, and I hope you'll join us next time when we will be discussing Mad Max, or as Wikipedia describes it, a tale of societal collapse, murder, and revenge set in future Australia, in which an unhinged policeman becomes embroiled in a violent feud with a savage motorcycle gang. So another cop movie. Not really, though. We leave you now with the trailer for Mad Max.
Tomorrow, in a world gone mad, the only law will be a renegade squad of suicidal cops.
He's my prisoner, and he's not walking out that door.
And the open road will be controlled by gangs of glory roaders. Max is a cop, one of the best.
Where does they're out to get you? Scoot jockeys? Yeah, nomad trash. Well, I'll add it to my thread collection.
You made the news again.
Relating to the slaying of a main force patrol officer.
Who was he?
In a road blockade accident last month.
Just another glory roader, I guess.
Toe Cutter is a glory roader, one of the most sadistic.
Anything I say, anything you say, what a wonderful philosophy you have. Take him away.
I want my baby.
You've not got a sense of humor.
Please, don't hurt my baby.
You've got a pretty face, though.
Both want the other dead. But only one can have his way. Mad Max. You don't want to make Max mad. Because when Max gets mad, he gets even. American International presents Mad Max, the maximum force of the future.